He had mocked plenty of soldiers in his career, but today, without realizing it, Colonel Harris was mocking the wrong one. And as the morning sun rose over the base, casting long shadows across the parade ground, every insult he threw at her brought him one step closer to the most humiliating revelation of his life. Welcome to United War, where real stories, real lessons, and real consequences unfold. And this story, this one begins long before anyone knew who she was. It started on a quiet Monday morning when a transport vehicle rolled through the base gates. The engine was dusty, the tires worn, and inside, sitting alone with a single duffel bag, was a woman who looked like she had seen more than most men on that base combined. She stepped out calmly, breathing the dry morning air, boots hitting the gravel with a steady rhythm. Her uniform bore no rank patches, no unit designations, nothing. It was blank, plain. That alone was enough to draw whispers. To the soldiers watching her, she looked too composed, too confident, yet too quiet. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't try to stand out. She simply reported to the main office and waited. That was when Colonel Harris first noticed her. He walked out of headquarters holding a cup of coffee, sunglasses on, posture relaxed as if the entire base belonged to him. When he spotted her, his eyebrows lifted with instant judgment. She didn't snap to attention. She didn't rush to greet him. She simply nodded politely. That alone irritated him. "Well," he scoffed loudly, "looks like the new one doesn't know basic respect. What'd they send us, another charity case?" A few soldiers around him snickered under the breath, unsure whether to laugh or stay silent. The woman didn't react. She simply waited. Harris walked closer, circling her like someone inspecting a stray animal. "No rank, no insignia, no unit. What are you, lost? Or did your recruiter forget to give you the rest of your uniform?" Still, she said nothing, not a word. She simply handed him her sealed orders. The colonel didn't even read them. He tucked the envelope under his arm like trash and waved her off. "Beginner's PT starts at 0500. You'll train with the rookies until I decide what to do with you." His voice carried across the courtyard, and soldiers exchanged uneasy looks. She didn't argue, she didn't defend herself. She simply nodded and walked toward the barracks. But the silence, that calm silence, only annoyed him further. He turned to the others and laughed loudly. "Look at her walking away like she owns the place. I've seen privates with more obedience." But the woman didn't walk like a private. She walked like someone who had survived deserts, mountains, and things no one on that base could imagine. Her steps were steady, measured, purposeful. The steps of someone who had endured a lifetime of discipline, not a rookie beginning her journey. Later that morning, while recruits were sweating through warm-ups, she moved with quiet precision. She wasn't trying to show off. She wasn't trying to prove anything. But every soldier noticed it. The way she paced her breathing with every exercise, the efficiency of her movements, the posture that never broke form. The drill sergeant paused more than once while leading the group. Something felt wrong. Something felt off. This woman didn't move like a trainee. She moved like someone who had taught trainees, someone with years of experience, someone above his own level of training. Yet, she kept a low profile, blending into the group, even though her skill set exposed her with every push-up and sprint. When Harris showed up during mid-morning drills, he smirked the moment he saw her. "Well now," he shouted across the field, "looks like someone finally knows how to sweat. Maybe this place will toughen you up after all." Her eyes briefly met his, but not with fear, with patience. It was the type of patience that only comes from knowing something others don't. The colonel strutted across the training field, making loud jokes at her expense. Jokes about her posture, her pace, her silence. The soldiers didn't laugh, not one of them. They watched her move with the grace of someone far more trained than them, and deep down they sensed the truth. This woman was not what she appeared. But Harris wouldn't see it. Not yet. Later, at the mess hall, she sat alone, eating quietly. A few soldiers approached her, curious but respectful. Before they could speak, Harris appeared behind them. "Careful," he said loudly. "You might catch whatever disease makes her allergic to speaking." The room felt awkwardly silent. The soldiers quickly dispersed. The woman continued eating, unbothered. "What's the matter?" he prodded. "Cat got your tongue? Or did your last commander teach you that staring at the floor counts as communication?" She looked up slowly, meeting his eyes for the first time. "Colonel," she said softly, "you haven't opened my orders." Her voice was calm, too calm. Harris froze for a split second, caught off guard by the confidence in her tone. But he quickly regained his arrogance. "Oh, trust me," he laughed. "I don't need to. I can smell inexperience a mile away." But it wasn't inexperience he was smelling. It was his own humiliation approaching, slowly, steadily, and with the weight of the highest authority he had ever disrespected. Because inside that sealed envelope under his arm was a truth that would flatten his ego, silence the entire base, and force every soldier to question the man they thought was their highest-ranking leader. And soon, very soon, Colonel Harris would discover exactly who she was, and how far above him she truly stood.
The sun dipped lower over the base as the afternoon heat settled into a heavy stillness, but tension hung in the air far thicker than the humidity. Every soldier who had witnessed the morning's exchanges between Colonel Harris and the mysterious woman found themselves whispering in corners, exchanging theories like contraband. None of them understood why she had no rank displayed. None understood how she remained so calm under Harris's constant taunting. But one thing they all understood: she wasn't ordinary. Still carrying her unopened orders, Colonel Harris strutted across the base with the swagger of a man who believed he stood at the top of the hierarchy. To him, the woman was a nobody, just another transfer, another soldier to mold, train, or dismiss. He didn't pause to consider that her quiet confidence meant something. He didn't notice the way seasoned NCOs watched her with narrowed eyes, sensing something familiar in the way she carried herself. He didn't see the way she scanned every perimeter automatically, as if she had done it for years. He only saw a target for his arrogance. That evening, during advanced drills, she stood with the group as soldiers adjusted gear and gloves. The sergeant in charge barked orders, and she followed every instruction perfectly. No hesitation, no sloppiness, no sign of being new at all. But Harris arrived unannounced again, strolling in as if the whole field was a stage for his performance. The moment he saw her standing among the advanced trainees, he erupted. "What is she doing here?" he shouted. "I didn't approve this." The sergeant stiffened. "Sir, her form is exceptional. She completed the earlier drills faster than—" "I didn't ask for excuses," Harris snapped, cutting him off. He turned toward her, eyes sharp with irritation. "You think you can move up just because you can run fast, because you look confident?" She didn't answer. She simply stood at attention. Something about that silence made him even angrier. "You will report back to beginner PT immediately." A few soldiers exchanged glances. One even muttered, "But sir," before stopping himself. Harris's head turned sharply toward the whisperer. "Is there a problem, Corporal?" "No, sir, none at all," the young man said quickly. She took a step forward, not with defiance, but with a calm formality that made several soldiers straighten involuntarily. "Colonel Harris," she said evenly, "I believe there is a misunderstanding. My orders—" "He don't care about your orders," he barked, holding up the still-sealed envelope. "This can wait." She let out a slow breath, the first sign of frustration the soldiers had seen all day. But she didn't press the issue. She simply nodded and turned back toward the starting line for beginner PT. Yet as she walked away, Harris caught something in her movement, something almost regal. It annoyed him, but at the same time, unsettled him. The whispers only grew once she was out of earshot. Why won't he read her orders? She's clearly trained. She moves like she's been doing this for years. She moves like she outranks him. The last comment made a few soldiers laugh nervously, unsure if the idea was ridiculous or somehow true. But the seed of suspicion was already alive in the ranks. Later that night, in the barracks, as soldiers changed into PT shorts and wiped sweat from their foreheads, the murmurs grew louder. A senior sergeant named McConnell, a man who'd seen more than most colonels would in a lifetime, approached a group gathered around their bunks. "You boys ever seen someone with that kind of posture walk into a base with no insignia?" he asked, lowering his voice. They shook their heads. "That's someone who's been places, someone who knows what she's doing. Not a rookie, not a transfer. She's something else." "Could she be special operations?" one whispered. McConnell shrugged, though his eyes suggested he had his own theories. "Whatever she is, Harris is making a mistake." Meanwhile, the woman sat alone on her bunk, lacing her boots for night drills. She didn't look angry. She didn't look bothered. She looked patient, like she understood everything that was happening and knew exactly how it would end. But that didn't mean she wasn't exhausted by it. She sighed softly, rubbing her forehead. She had hoped to keep a low profile, slip in quietly, and begin her assignment without drawing attention. But Harris's arrogance made that impossible. And the longer he went without opening her orders, the more embarrassing his situation would become. Still, she didn't want confrontation. She didn't want drama. She wanted to do her job quietly, efficiently, and without spectacle. But the colonel was determined to create one. When night drills began, the field was lit only by dim floodlights. The woman joined the beginner group again, performing obstacle runs and tactical movements with flawless precision. The sergeant in charge kept glancing at her, shaking his head in disbelief. "She's better than half the instructors," he muttered under his breath. Halfway through the drills, Colonel Harris reappeared as if pulled by the magnetic force of his own ego. He watched her for a long moment, irritation growing with every flawless movement she made. Finally, he barked, "Stop the drill." Everyone froze. He walked toward her, boots crunching through the gravel. "You just don't quit, do you? You think you're impressive? You think you're special?" She looked him in the eyes, calm as ever. "No, sir," she said quietly. "I just think you should read my orders." Gasps whispered through the group. No one had ever spoken to Harris like that, not directly, not calmly, and certainly not someone with no rank on their uniform. Harris stepped closer, face inches from hers. "You don't tell me what to do," he growled. "You follow my command." She held his stare, unflinching. "Of course, Colonel," she replied softly. "But you're giving orders to someone you believe is beneath you, and that is not the case." Silence. A thick, heavy silence. It settled on the field like a weight. Some soldiers actually stopped breathing. Harris's jaw clenched. His pride stung like a fresh wound. He opened his mouth to retaliate, but before he could, a voice called from the far side of the field. "Colonel Harris, you're needed in headquarters immediately." He turned sharply. The lieutenant jogging toward him looked shaken. "It's urgent, sir. You need to come now." Harris looked annoyed, but the urgency was undeniable. He shot the woman one last glare. "This conversation isn't over," he snapped before storming off. But for her, it was over. Because behind the doors of headquarters, he would finally open that sealed envelope, and the truth waiting inside would destroy everything he thought he knew about the chain of command on his base.
The tension inside Falcon Base had become something everyone could feel in the air. What began as a few mocking comments from Colonel Briggs had now turned into a pattern, one that people whispered about behind closed doors. And right in the middle of this storm stood Admiral Elise Ward, still wearing the disguise of a newly transferred junior officer. But the truth was, she noticed everything. Every expression, every insult, every assumption. And she let it happen. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to see how deep the rot went. The shift begins. By the time the next morning rolled around, Briggs was already in rare form. Elise walked into the strategy center, only to hear his voice echoing through the hall. "There she is," Briggs said loudly, leaning back in his chair. "Our new expert. Maybe today she'll manage to hold a map the right way up." A few officers chuckled. Others looked away, uncomfortable. Elise's expression didn't change. She simply walked to the operations board and began studying the deployment grid. But this time, something was different. People had seen how she handled herself in the drill. They had seen the colonel lose his temper while she kept hers. And for the first time, a few officers started noticing something they'd ignored before. The way she carried herself, the confidence in her stride, the precision of her decisions. There was no way she was just ordinary. The colonel's big mistake. Briggs marched over to her, arms folded. "You again? Don't touch that board. That's for senior officers." Without looking at him, Elise replied calmly, "I'm reviewing the weak points in your perimeter layout." "My layout?" "Yes. There are 7 major vulnerabilities. 4 of them require immediate correction." That did it. Humiliated and furious, Briggs stepped directly into her space. "This is my base, my command. I don't care what story your previous station told you. Here you follow my orders." A few soldiers stopped walking. The room grew quiet. Elise turned her head and looked at him with steady eyes. Not angry, not defensive, just resolute. Something flickered in Briggs' chest. He couldn't explain it, but her stare unsettled him. Something doesn't add up. Later that afternoon, Captain Jalen Ortiz, one of the rising stars of the base, found Elise outside, reviewing tactical data on a tablet. He approached her cautiously. "Lieutenant, can I ask something, off the record?" She gave him permission with a nod. "Why do you let him talk to you like that? You don't move like a junior officer, and you sure don't think like one." She didn't answer directly. Instead, she asked, "Captain, tell me honestly, do most people here respect Colonel Briggs?" He hesitated. "They respect his rank." "That's not what I asked." He sighed. "No, not really. He's good at paperwork. He's terrible at leadership." Elise tucked her tablet under her arm and gave a small smile, almost sad, almost knowing. "Then I needed to see that for myself." Ortiz stared at her confused. Before he could ask more, a loud alarm blared across the base. The security breach. Emergency lights flashed red. A voice shouted through the intercom. "Unauthorized aircraft approaching South Ridge. All officers report to command." Soldiers sprinted across the yard. Briggs burst from the main building, barking orders with no clear structure. Chaos erupted. Officers scrambled. Instructions overlapped. Nothing was coordinated. Elise observed everything silently for 10 seconds. Then she moved. The Admiral breaks her silence. She walked straight toward the command center, weaving through panicked soldiers. Her voice, calm yet firm, rose above the noise. "Redirect the ground units to the ridgeline. Deploy drones on a 6-point arc. Shut down landing zones Bravo through Echo." No one questioned her. Her tone carried authority they instinctively obeyed. But then Briggs turned, his face red. "Who told you to give orders?" Elise stopped walking. For the first time she faced him directly, neither cold nor angry, just done hiding. "Colonel, if you continue to mismanage this situation, you'll get people killed." Gasps filled the air. Briggs stepped forward. "How dare you?" And that's when a voice came over the base-wide channel, stopping both of them cold. "Admiral Ward, your shuttle is arriving in 30 minutes. We're ready for your tour of command." Every single person in the courtyard froze. Briggs's jaw dropped. Ortiz stared at Elise as if seeing her for the first time. Soldiers exchanged wide-eyed looks. She didn't flinch. She didn't smile. She simply straightened her uniform and said, "Thank you. Patch me through to Central." The truth was out. The woman he mocked, the woman he belittled, the woman he treated like a rookie, was his superior by multiple ranks.
The courtyard remained frozen in stunned silence. Soldiers who had once looked at Elise as an inexperienced recruit now stood motionless, realizing the truth. They had been watching an admiral, their admiral, walk among them, quietly studying everything they thought she didn't notice. Colonel Briggs looked like the world had dropped out from under him. His face drained of color, his breath hitched in his throat. And Elise, she didn't bask in the reveal. She didn't look triumphant. She simply carried the calm dignity of someone who never needed to boast about rank. Because true power never shouts. It just is. The aftermath begins. The shuttle landed with a soft thrum near the command center, its emblem unmistakable: Fleet Command Authority. Officers snapped to attention immediately. The air no longer belonged to Colonel Briggs. It belonged to Admiral Elise Ward, fully revealed. A lieutenant stepped forward nervously. "Admiral, do you want an escort?" Elise shook her head gently. "No, but thank you. I'd like the senior staff in the briefing room in 5 minutes." People scattered instantly to obey. Briggs, however, remained rooted to the ground, as if the earth might swallow him whole before she addressed him. Elise turned her head toward him, her expression unreadable. "Colonel," she said quietly, "walk with me." He followed because he had no choice. A walk he would never forget. As they moved toward the command building, Elise didn't raise her voice. She didn't insult him. She didn't echo any of the disrespect he had shown her. Instead, she used the tone of someone delivering truth, calm, precise, unshakable. She began, "You had talented officers here, people ready to give their best, people who needed a leader." Briggs swallowed hard, unable to speak. "And instead," she continued, "you gave them fear. You taught them to stay quiet. You punished initiative. You rewarded arrogance." Briggs finally stammered, "Admiral, I didn't know." Elise stopped walking and faced him directly. "You didn't need to know my rank to show basic respect." Her voice remained level. "You didn't need to know who I was to listen or to lead with humility." He lowered his head. "And that," she said, "is why you failed." The briefing room reckoning. When Elise entered the briefing room, every officer stood at rigid attention. Ortiz tried not to look nervous, but his eyes betrayed the shock lingering inside him. Elise gestured for everyone to sit. Briggs attempted to slide into his usual seat near the head of the table, but Elise raised one hand slightly. "Colonel, back row, please." A murmur rippled through the room. Briggs obeyed. Elise began the meeting with the authority she had concealed for days. There was a security breach today, but the biggest danger wasn't the aircraft approaching the ridge. Her gaze moved slowly across the table. It was the disorganization inside this room. No one breathed. You are capable officers, but capability means nothing without discipline, without unity, without a leader who empowers instead of belittles. She didn't look at Briggs, but everyone else did. Elise tapped the tactical display. As of this moment, Colonel Briggs is relieved of operational command. Gasps escaped the room.
Briggs looked like someone had punched the air from his lungs. "You will retain your rank," she added, "pending review. But you will not command this base until I determine you're capable of leading its people with respect." Briggs' voice cracked. "Admiral, please." Elise cut in. "This is not punishment. It's accountability and an opportunity to grow." Her restraint stunned everyone more than anger ever could. A new era for the base. After dismissing Briggs, Elise addressed the remaining officers. "This base has potential, and starting today, we rebuild it together. No fear, no ego, no silence." Ortiz lifted his hand nervously. "Admiral, why come under cover? Why endure all that disrespect?" Elise took a thoughtful breath. "Because rank can hide the truth. But when people think no one important is watching, their real leadership shows." The room fell into a reflective hush. "And now we can move forward honestly." The final moment, respect earned, not demanded. As Elise exited the room, every officer in the corridor snapped to attention. Not because she outranked them, not because protocol required it, but because they respected her. Colonel Briggs watched from the far end of the hall, his posture small, but his expression changed. No arrogance, no sneer, just humility. Elise paused beside him. "For what it's worth," she said softly, "I believe you can become the leader your rank requires." Briggs nodded, eyes lowered. "Thank you, Admiral. I won't forget this." "I hope not. Your people deserve better." Elise walked away, the weight of the base now centered under the command of someone who didn't need a loud voice, a raised chin, or an inflated ego. She only needed presence, judgment, honor. Leadership in its purest form. And from that day forward, Falcon Base was never the same.